The twin suns were slowly setting behind the glass towers of Nova 5 Colony, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. The evening air carried the sound of hovering cars, alien vendors shouting about their glowing fruits, and music from street performers playing strange instruments that humans had never seen before. David. Carter walked through the busy bazaar with a tired look on his face. He had just finished his work at the energy plant and wanted nothing more than to reach his small apartment and rest. His shirt was dusty, his hands smelled of machine oil, and his mind was filled with tomorrow's tasks. He was just passing a stall selling alien drinks, bright liquids floating in glass orbs, when something unexpected happened. A girl? No. Not a girl, but clearly not human either, rushed out from the crowd, holding 2 glowing cups. Her silver hair shimmered under the twin suns, and her skin had a soft lavender tone. Her eyes were large, bright like polished gems, with thin silver lines running across them. She wasn't watching where she was going, before David could move aside. The alien girl collided with him. The drink splashed across his chest, staining his already dirty shirt with bright purple liquid that smelled like a mix of flowers and metal. Oh no. The girl gasped, her voice soft but full of panic. I'm so sorry, I didn't see you. David stepped back, looking at the purple mess on his shirt. For a moment he wanted to get angry, but when he looked up at the girl, he froze. She was beautiful, not in a normal way. Her face had strange alien markings on her cheeks that glowed faintly under the fading sunlight. Her hair moved slightly, as if an invisible breeze played with it. She looked young, maybe his age, maybe a little older. It's fine, David said slowly, even though it clearly wasn't. Just, my shirt is ruined. The alien girl bit her lip nervously. Then she said quickly, I can fix it. Please, let me fix it. I live nearby. I have something that will clean it completely. I promise. David hesitated. He didn't know her. This was an alien city. Humans had been living here only for 20 years after the peace treaty with the Zinuri Empire. Most aliens ignored humans. Some didn't like them at all. But this girl looked genuinely sorry, scared. Okay, he said finally. But I don't have much time. It won't take long, she said, relief flooding her strange glowing eyes. My name is Lyra. Follow me. Please. David followed her through narrow streets, glowing with alien neon signs. The city changed as they walked. The bazaar was noisy and crowded. But soon they entered quieter alleys where walls were covered with crawling plants that glowed faintly in the dark. Alien children with blue skin played in the streets, and small drone-like machines flew overhead carrying packages. Lyra walked quickly, not looking back much. She seemed nervous, as if someone was watching. Finally, they reached a small building. With round doors and soft lights, Lyra pressed her hand against a glowing panel, and the door slid open with a hiss. Come in, she said softly. David stepped inside. The room was simple, but strange. The walls were curved, covered in flowing patterns that shifted like water. A faint hum came from the ceiling lights. On one side, there was a table with glowing crystals. On the other, a device that looked like a washing machine, but wrong. It had no door, no buttons, just a floating ring of blue light above a platform. Lyra pointed to it. Give me your shirt. David raised an eyebrow. You're serious? Yes, trust me. With a shrug, David pulled off his stained shirt and handed it to her. Lyra placed it carefully on the glowing platform. She touched a panel on the wall. The ring of light moved slowly down over the shirt. As it passed, the purple stain vanished instantly. The fabric looked cleaner than it ever had. The machine made no sound except for a soft hum, and then the ring disappeared. Lyra smiled faintly. See? All fixed. David blinked. Wow, that's advanced. But then something strange happened. As Lyra lifted the shirt, a faint blue symbol appeared on the fabric. It glowed softly for a moment before fading away. David frowned. What was that? Lyra froze. Her smile disappeared. For a second, her expression changed to fear. "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Just, the cleaner sometimes does that. It's fine." David wasn't convinced. He put the shirt back on. It felt different, lighter, almost like it was humming softly against his skin. He looked at Lyra. "You sure everything's okay?" Lyra nodded quickly. Too quickly. It's completely okay. But David noticed her hands were trembling. When he left the building, the suns had fully set. The streets were glowing with alien lights now, and the air felt cooler. David walked back to his apartment, his mind full of questions. Who was Lyra really? Why had she looked so scared when the blue symbol appeared? And why? Why did it feel like someone was watching him as he walked away? Up on the rooftop, hidden in the shadows, two alien figures stood silently, their glowing eyes following David as he disappeared into the night. One of them spoke in a low, cold voice. He doesn't know what the mark means. Yet the other nodded. Then we watch. When he learns the truth, it will be too late. This was only the beginning. David thought it was just a ruined shirt, but that small accident was about to pull him into a story of secrets, danger, and choices that would change both human and alien worlds forever. The next morning on Nova 5 Colony began like any other day. The twin suns rose slowly, turning the sky into a sea of golden fire. Hovercars floated above the streets, merchants opened their glowing shops, and the air was filled with the smell of alien spices. But David Carter's mind was far from normal. He stood in front of his apartment mirror, staring at his shirt, the same shirt that had been ruined yesterday, and then cleaned by the alien girl, Lyra. It looked perfect. Too perfect. The fabric felt smoother than before, almost alive. And deep inside, he swore he could feel a faint humming when he touched it, like a tiny heartbeat hiding under the cloth. And worst of all, that strange blue symbol. It wasn't there now, not visible. Before he went to sleep, he could have sworn he saw it glowing faintly in the dark. Who was that girl, really? David shook his head and grabbed his work bag. He had no time for alien mysteries. But fate had other plans. The unexpected visit. As he stepped outside, he froze. Lyra was standing there, waiting near his door. The early sunlight fell across her silver hair, making it shine. She looked calm, but her eyes were nervous, like someone hiding a big secret. Hi, David said slowly. You followed me? Lyra shook her head quickly. No, I waited. I need to talk to you. David folded his arms. The shirt, she nodded. Yes, something happened yesterday. Something I didn't mean to happen. David raised an eyebrow. You mean the symbol? Lyra looked around quickly as if scared someone might hear. Then she whispered, Not here, it's not safe. Please, come with me. It's just for a little while. David stared at her. Him wanted to refuse. He didn't know her. This was an alien world. Humans didn't mix much with the Zanari, not beyond basic trade and work. But something in Lyra's face, the way she bit her lip nervously, the way her hands trembled slightly, told him this was serious. All right, David said finally. Lead the way. Journey to the unknown. They left the human district and moved deeper into the alien city. The streets here were stranger narrow walkways made of glowing stone. Tall towers shaped like giant spirals and creatures floating in the air that looked like living balloons. Some aliens stared at David as they passed, their eyes following the human with unreadable expressions. Lyra kept walking fast, speaking very little. Finally, they reached a quiet part of the city with wide canals full of glowing water. A long bridge crossed the canal, leading to a cluster of tall buildings shaped like giant shells. Lyra stopped near one of them. The door slid open silently, and they stepped inside. The hidden apartment, the room was much bigger than the one David had seen yesterday. Strange glowing plants covered the walls, giving off soft blue light. There was a faint sound of running water somewhere behind the walls. In the center stood a table made of smooth black stone. On it lay several crystal devices, each one glowing softly, like it held a tiny piece of the sky inside. Lyra motioned for him to sit. David stayed standing. "All right, talk. What's going on?" Lyra hesitated. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "The device I used yesterday," she began slowly, "was not just a cleaner." David crossed his arms. "I figured that much." Lyra sighed. "It was a royal marker. A machine used by the Zinari royal family. It marks clothes or people belonging to the royal bloodline." David blinked. "You're saying my shirt now says I'm... what? Some alien prince?" Lyra bit her lip. "Not a prince. A chosen one. Someone connected to the royal family. The mark means protection. It means respect. It also means danger." David stared at her. "Danger? From who?" Lyra glanced toward the door before speaking again. "There are factions in the Zinari Empire who hate the royal family. They want power for themselves. Anyone carrying the royal mark becomes a target." David felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "So you're telling me? Yesterday, you accidentally put a giant target on my back." Lyra looked guilty. "Yes, I didn't mean to. I didn't know you were human when I used it. The device is old, unpredictable. But now people will come for you. People who want to erase the royal line." David rubbed his face. "Great. Just great." The offerer leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "There's a way to fix this. To remove the mark. Duh, but it won't be easy. I can help you, if you let me." David stared at her suspiciously. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Lyra looked down at her hands. For a moment, her confident tone vanished, replaced by something softer. "Because something happens to you, it will be my fault," she said quietly. "And because I think you don't deserve to die for a mistake that wasn't yours." David studied her face. The fear in her eyes was real. Finally, he sighed. "All right, I'll let you help me. But after that, I want my normal life back. No royal marks, no assassins, no alien politics." Lyra nodded. "Agreed." But deep inside, David had a feeling things would not be that simple. The shadows moved outside. Across the canal, two figures watched the building from the shadows. One of them spoke in a low, cold voice. "So, the human knows now." The other one hissed softly. "Then it begins. The mark will bring hunters, assassins, and when they come, now the girl will have no choice but to reveal the truth." They melted back into the darkness, leaving the city streets quiet and still. David didn't know it yet, but the choice he had just made to trust Lyra, to remove the mark, would pull him into a conflict much bigger than himself. And soon, there would be no turning back. The day moved slowly on Nova 5 colony. David Carter tried to focus on his work at the energy plant, but his mind refused to stay quiet. Every time he looked down at his shirt, he wondered if someone in the crowd could see the invisible mark that Lyra had told him about. He kept checking himself in the reflection of the control screens, half expecting the blue symbol to start glowing again. It didn't, but the memory of it refused to leave his head. Was it really true? Did this simple accident really make him a target for alien assassins? It sounded crazy, impossible, and yet the look in Lyra's eyes yesterday had been too real to ignore strange reactions when his shift ended. David walked through the crowded streets of the city. Humans and aliens mixed here, trading goods, eating food from floating stalls, laughing near the canals. But something felt off. For the first time, David noticed the stares. Some aliens paused mid-step as he passed, their glowing eyes locking on his shirt for a fraction of a second before they looked away quickly. The vendor selling glowing fruits bowed his head slightly. Without even realizing it, two alien guards near the checkpoint stood straighter when they saw him, as if showing respect. David frowned. Lyra had said the royal mark demanded respect. It was the mark of someone important in the Zinari Empire. And apparently, aliens could sense it. That made him feel worse, not better. Because if they could sense it, then so could the people who wanted the royal family dead. The warning message when David finally reached his small apartment. He found a small metallic cube sitting outside his door. It wasn't there this morning. He bent down and picked it up carefully. The cube was smooth, cold, and pulsing with faint red light as soon as he touched it. The cube unfolded like origami, revealing a tiny floating screen. A single message appeared. On it, written in glowing alien letters. David couldn't read the Zanari language, but the device helpfully translated it into human English. Do not wear the shirt tomorrow. This is your only warning. David felt his stomach drop. Someone new, someone out there had seen the mark and was warning him or threatening him. Be both. He set the cube down slowly, his mind spinning. Was this from Lyra? No, she would have just told him directly. This was someone else. Someone watching, meeting Lyra again. That evening, David returned to Lyra's strange apartment near the canals. She looked tense when he told her about the warning message. Her silver eyes darkened. They've seen you already, she said softly. That means they're moving faster than I expected. Is they exactly? David demanded. Lyra hesitated. The Shadow Faction. Rebels. Assassins. Call them whatever you want. They want the royal family gone, so they can take power for themselves. David rubbed his forehead. Great, so I'm walking around with a big glowing "Please kill me" sign on my chest. Lyra didn't smile. She moved to the black stone table and pulled out a strange crystal device. It glowed faintly, covered in swirling alien symbols. There is a way to hide the mark for now, she said. It won't last long, but it might buy us time. She held the crystal toward him. David didn't move. What happens if I say no? Lyra looked at him seriously. Then you'll be dead within 3 days. That got him moving. The ritual Lyra told him to stand still as she activated the crystal. Blue light spilled across the room, forming strange patterns in the air. The patterns circled David slowly, moving like living things. They wrapped around his chest, his arms, even his face. David felt a faint burning sensation on his skin, not painful, but not comfortable either. When the light faded, Lyra stepped back. It's hidden now, she said, to most eyes at least. But not forever. The mark will fight back. Fight back. David repeated. It's a shirt, not a living thing. Lyra didn't answer, but the way she looked at him made David's stomach twist. The first sign appears that night. David couldn't sleep. He kept feeling strange. His skin was hot. His heartbeat was too fast. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of blue light in the dark, like lightning behind his eyelids. Finally, he threw off his blanket and looked at himself in the mirror and froze. The mark was back. It wasn't on the shirt this time. It was on his skin, a glowing blue symbol burned faintly across his chest, right over his heart. David stumbled back. What the hell? The mark pulsed softly like it was alive. Lyra's fear, he ran to Lyra's apartment in the middle of the night, pounding on her door until she opened it. One look at the glowing symbol on his chest made her face go pale. No, she whispered. It's too soon. Too soon for what? David demanded. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She touched the mark gently, her fingers trembling. This isn't just a royal mark anymore, she said softly. It's choosing you. David stared at her. Choosing me for what? Lyra's eyes met his, filled with fear. For something you're not ready for, she whispered. And if the assassins see this, they won't just come for you. They'll burn this whole city to the ground to stop it. Somewhere in the darkness of the city, the Shadow Faction was already gathering. The hunt for the human with the mark had begun, and David Carter's ordinary life was over for good. The night on Nova 5 Colony was darker than usual. Twin moons hid behind thick clouds, leaving the streets in shadows. The only light came from alien signs glowing faintly on the walls and the strange plants that gave off a soft blue glow. David Carter sat on the edge of Lyra's table, staring down at his chest, where the blue mark pulsed faintly like a living thing. It had started glowing on its own. No machine, no crystal, no one touching it. It was alive. And now Lyra looked, scared. That alone terrified David more than the mark itself. Questions with no answers, Lyra paced across the room, her silver hair moving like liquid light. This shouldn't be happening, she muttered, almost to herself. The mark only chooses royal blood. It's not supposed to react like this. David folded his arms. Yeah, well, surprise. I'm not royal. I'm not even Zenari. I'm human. So maybe your little alien device is broken? Lyra stopped pacing and looked at him sharply. It's not broken. It never malfunctions. Not in hundreds of years. David stared at her, then explained this. He pointed at his chest where the mark glowed faintly under his skin. Explain why this thing is acting like it owns me?
Lyra?
Didn't answer immediately. Her glowing eyes looked troubled, almost like she knew something she didn't want to say. Finally, she whispered, because it doesn't just mark. It awakens. David frowned. Awakens what? Lyra hesitated. A connection, bond between the royal bloodline and its protector. David blinked. Protector. No, no, no. I fix power generators for a living. I'm not anyone's protector. Lyra gave him a sad look. The mark disagrees. The secret in the archives. Lyra finally stopped pacing. There's only one way to be sure. We have to go to the royal archives. The records there will tell us why the mark chose you. David shook his head. No. What we have to do is get this thing off me. You promised you'd help me remove it. I will, Lyra said. But first, we need to know what we're dealing with. The archives will have the truth. David didn't like this plan, didn't like any of this. But the glowing mark on his chest wasn't going away, and the warning message from the Shadow faction still burned in his mind. Fine, he said. Finally, but after this, I want my normal life back. Lyra didn't reply. The journey begins. The royal archives were in the oldest part of the city, a place where even locals rarely went. Lyra led David through narrow streets, across glowing bridges, and into a district where the buildings were shaped like giant black spires. Strange symbols were carved into the walls. Glowing faintly as they passed, the air here felt heavier, thicker, like the city itself was holding its breath. Finally, they reached a massive building shaped like a half-buried sphere. Its surface was covered in ancient runes that pulsed faintly with blue light. 2 royal guards stood at the entrance, their armor black and silver, their faces hidden by smooth helmets. When they saw Lyra, they stepped aside immediately. David frowned. They just let us in. Lyra didn't meet his eyes. They recognized the mark. As long as it glows on you, they won't stop us. Inside the archives, the inside of the building felt even stranger. The floor was smooth black stone. Tall shelves filled with glowing crystals stretched toward the ceiling. Each crystal floated slightly above its stand, humming softly as if it contained a piece of the past itself. At the center of the hall stood a single, massive crystal, shaped like a throne. Strange blue energy flowed through it like veins of lightning. Lyra walked toward it. David followed slowly, his eyes scanning the walls, covered in alien writing. This place gives me the creeps, he muttered. Lyra placed her hand on the throne-like crystal. It lit up instantly, casting blue light across the hall. The archives respond to royal blood, she said softly. Or the mark. David glanced at the glowing symbol on his chest. Yeah, lucky me. The truth revealed the crystal throne. Projected an image into the air, a glowing map of stars and alien faces. Strange symbols spun around it before forming words in English so David could read. Royal Guardian Protocol. Activated. David frowned. Guardian. The image changed. It showed a tall figure covered in armor standing beside a Zenari queen. The armor glowed with the same blue light as David's mark. Lyra stared at the projection, her face pale. I knew it, she whispered. The mark didn't choose you by accident. It thinks you're the next royal guardian. David threw up his hands. Great, fantastic. What does a royal guardian do? Guard royalty? Because newsflashing? Not interested. But the projection continued. Royal guardian, defender of the bloodline, chosen when the empire faces its greatest threat. David felt cold. Defender against what? The crystal throne flickered before displaying another. Image dark shapes moving across the stars, ships burning, cities falling. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. The Shadow Faction, and something worse. The hunters arrived before David could speak. The sound of blasters echoed outside the building. Lyra turned sharply toward the entrance. "They've found us," she whispered. The guards outside shouted. Something in Zinari, before a massive explosion shook the entire hall. David ducked behind the crystal throne as smoke filled the doorway. Figures in black armor stepped through the haze hall, silent, carrying weapons that glowed with red light. Their helmets had no eyes, just smooth. Curved masks like predators from a nightmare. The Shadow Faction had arrived. The mark responds as the assassins raise their weapons. David felt the mark on his chest burn hotter than ever before. Blue light. Spread across his arms like living fire. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's awakening fully," she whispered. "Hey, it's giving you its power." David stared at his glowing hands in shock. The assassins opened fire, and David moved faster than he ever thought possible. This was no longer just about a ruined shirt. This was about survival, and the mark wasn't going to let its chosen guardian die tonight. Smoke filled the royal archives. The tall shelves of glowing crystals shook with every blast, and the floor trembled like it would break apart. David Carter stood in the center, his heart racing, his hands glowing with strange blue energy from the mark on his chest. The Shadow Faction assassins surrounded the hall, their black armor shining in the blue light. Red laser rifles hummed, ready to kill. Lyra stood near him, her silver eyes wide with fear, but not for herself. She was watching him. Watching the mark come alive on his body, the assassins moved in slowly. Then, without thinking, David raised his hand. A burst of blue light exploded outward, knocking 3 assassins off their feet. Their weapons clattered across the floor. David stumbled back, staring at his glowing hand. What was that?" Lyra grabbed his arm. "The mark is giving you the Royal Guardian's power. It chose you. It won't let you die." "I didn't sign up for this," David shouted as another blast hit the crystal throne behind him, spraying shards across the floor. "You didn't have to," Lyra said. "It already decided." The fight for survival, the assassins opened fire again. But this time, David moved like someone else controlled him. He raised both hands, and a shimmering blue shield formed in front of him. The red blasts hit the shield and vanished into sparks. Lyra threw a small crystal sphere at the attackers. It exploded with blinding light, forcing the assassins to fall. "Back! Move!" she shouted, pulling David toward the side exit. They ran through a narrow hallway lined with floating crystals. Behind them, the assassins regrouped, their heavy footsteps echoing as they gave chase. David's chest burned where the mark pulsed with power. Every heartbeat felt louder, stronger. Finally, they reached the back door of the archives. Lyra slammed her hand on a glowing panel, and the door slid open, revealing the dark canals outside. They ran into the night. The sound of water splashing under their boots, the air filled with alien sirens as the city reacted to the attack. Royal soldiers appear before the assassins could follow. Black and silver soldiers in heavy armor arrived on hovering skiffs. Blocking the Shadow Faction's path, royal soldiers, their weapons glowed blue instead of red. They moved with perfect discipline, forming a wall between David and the assassins. "Protect the chosen." One shouted in Zinari language before switching to English. "Protect the Guardian." David froze. "Wait, what did he call me?" Lyra grabbed his arm again. "Not now. Keep moving." The royal soldiers and assassins clashed in a storm of blue and red light as David and Lyra slipped into the narrow streets beyond the canals. The king's summons, they didn't stop running until they reached Lyra's hidden apartment. David collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. His hands were still glowing faintly. Lyra closed the door, locking it with 3 different alien seals. David looked up at her. "Okay, no more secrets. What is happening to me?" Before she could answer, the wall screen in her apartment lit up with the royal crest, a silver star over blue flame. A voice spoke. deep and commanding. "This is King Arian of the Zanari Empire. Bring the chosen guardian to the palace at once." David stared at the screen in disbelief. "The king? The king wants to see me?" Lyra nodded slowly. "You carry the guardian's mark. He will want to meet you himself." David ran a hand through his hair. "Great. First assassins, now royalty. What's next? A wedding invitation?" Lyra didn't laugh. She looked uncomfortable, and that worried David more than anything else tonight. The Palace of Stars, the next morning. Royal guards escorted David and Lyra to the palace. The Palace of Stars stood high above the city, its towers made of crystal and silver metal that glowed under the twin suns. Massive banners hung from its walls, each showing the royal crest. Inside, the palace was even more overwhelming, endless halls of white stone, floating platforms carrying alien nobles. Fountains of liquid light casting rainbows across the walls. David felt completely out of place. A day ago, he was just fixing power generators. Now royal guards bowed slightly as he passed. Finally, they reached the throne room at the far end. On a raised platform of shining crystal sat King Oriental, armored in silver and blue, his crown glowing faintly like the mark on David's chest. His eyes burned like twin stars as he studied the human before him. "The proposal, David Carter," the king said in perfect English. His deep voice filled the hall. "You carry the guardian's mark. Do you know what that means?" David swallowed. "Didn't, until about 5 minutes ago." The king stood slowly. "Long ago, the royal guardian protected this empire from enemies who sought to destroy it. The mark chooses only when darkness rises again." David shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, about that. It was an accident." "Your daughter Lyra coughed sharply." David blinked. "What? Wait, you're the king's daughter?" Lyra avoided his eyes. "King," Orion continued, "accident or not, the mark has chosen you. The Empire faces war once more. We need a guardian. Now we have one." David raised his hands. "Hold on. I'm not a soldier. I'm not even from this planet. Fix machines. For a living." The king's burning eyes softened slightly. "Then we will teach you. Train you. You will stand beside my daughter, Lyra, as the guardian always has, beside the royal heir." David froze. Beside her. Lyra shifted uncomfortably. King Arian's voice dropped lower. "In time, the guardian becomes more than a protector. He becomes part of the royal family itself." David blinked. "You mean, yes," the king said simply. "The guardian becomes the heir's chosen partner." "Yes." Shock and doubt, David stared at Lyra. She looked everywhere except at him. "Wait," David said slowly. "So you're telling me want me to protect her, marry her, and fight a war? All because some glowing tattoo decided I'm special?" The king nodded once. "The mark never chooses wrong." David ran a hand down his face. This was insane. Absolutely insane. But before he could speak again, a royal messenger ran into the throne room. His armor scorched, his face pale. "Your Majesty," he shouted, "Dada-dadded, the Shadow faction has launched a full attack on the outer colonies. Coming for the Guardian." The king's burning eyes turned toward David. "It seems," King Arian said softly, "your choice must come sooner than expected." David Carter had wanted a normal life, but the universe had just given him a war, a princess, and a destiny he didn't understand, and he wasn't sure if he could survive any of it. The throne room was silent after the messenger's words. The Shadow faction was attacking again. "King," Ryan rose from his throne slowly, the glowing crown casting sharp shadows across his face. His silver armor glimmered under the pale light of the floating crystal chandeliers. He turned to the royal guards. "Prepare the palace defenses. Ready the fleet." Now the guards slammed their fists against their chests in salute before rushing out. David stood frozen, the mark on his chest faintly, glowing under his torn shirt. He looked at Lyra, who was pale but calm. "Why are they coming after me?" David finally asked, his voice low. Lyra's eyes met his. "Because the guardian mark means hope and power. And power is what they fear most. King Orion stepped down from his platform and stopped right in front of David. For the first time, the human could see how tall the king was, how old and powerful he seemed, like a living piece of history. "You must come with me," the king said. "You need to see the truth for yourself." The hidden chamber. The king led David and Lyra through the palace's long, glowing corridors. Soldiers ran past them, weapons ready, alarms ringing through the halls. Finally, they reached a massive door guarded by 2 soldiers in dark blue armor. The door opened with a deep hum, revealing a stairway spiraling down into the palace's heart. They descended into the darkness till they reached a chamber glowing with blue fire. In the center stood a massive crystal sphere, suspended in mid-air, spinning slowly. Inside the crystal, images flickered, planets burning, ships exploding, cities falling under shadow. David stared, his stomach tightening. "What is that?" King Orion stepped closer to the sphere. "This is the memory core. It holds the history of the Zanari Empire, the warnings of what may come." The sphere glowed brighter, and suddenly an image appeared. Shadow, faction ships attacking planets, leaving nothing but ashes. David stepped back. "That's what's happening now?" The king's face darkened. "No, that was centuries ago. They were defeated once, but not destroyed. We thought they were gone forever. We were wrong." Another image flickered inside the crystal. The Shadow faction leader, tall, armored figure with glowing red eyes and a long, dark cloak. David felt cold just looking at him. "Who is that?" Lyra's voice was quiet. "Calls himself Lord." "Varrock. He was once part of the royal council, till he betrayed the empire." Betrayal. David turned sharply. "Why do you mean one of you created this mess?" King Arian's jaw tightened. Varrock believed the empire had grown weak under peace, wanted control, power. When he was denied the throne, he built the Shadow faction from loyal soldiers and assassins. For years he attacked our borders in secret. Lyra added softly. "But now, he wants more than power. He wants the Guardian Mark. With it, he can claim the throne by ancient law." David felt the weight of the glowing mark on his chest. "So this Varrock guy, if he kills me, he wins." The king's eyes burned. "If he kills you, the empire falls." The Guardian's duty. David paced the room, his hands shaking. "It's insane. I'm not some chosen hero. I fix broken generators for a living. I'm not ready for this." King Orion placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "The Mark chose you for a reason. The Guardian rises when the empire faces its darkest hour." David shook his head. "Yeah, well, maybe it chose wrong this time." Lyra stepped closer, her voice softer now. "It didn't choose wrong. It never does." David met her eyes, and for a moment the room felt quieter, like the crystal sphere itself was listening. The king broke the silence. "The Guardian's duty is not only to fight, it is to protect the royal heir. With his life." David looked at Lyra again. She was watching him carefully, her silver eyes unreadable. "Protect her?" David asked slowly. The king nodded. "At all costs. The heir must live, or the empire dies with her." The warning. Before David could reply, the crystal sphere flickered. Again, this time, it showed something terrifying. Shadow faction ships moving through space, straight toward the palace planet. David's chest burned with heat as the mark on his skin glowed brighter. Lyra gasped. "They're coming here now." King Orion turned sharply to the guards. "Prepare the palace shields. Get the people underground." Ground trembled as distant explosions rocked the city above. David stumbled. "They're already here." The king's voice was grim. "Varrock moves faster than I expected. He knows the Guardian is awake." Lyra grabbed David's arm. "We have to leave the palace. If they find you here, the city will be destroyed." David looked between her and the king. "Leave? Where are we supposed to go?" "This is your planet." King Arian's expression hardened. "There is one place Varrock will not follow. The Forbidden Zone." Lyra's eyes widened. "Father, no. That place is cursed. It is safe," the king said sharply. "The old ruins will protect them until the fleet drives Varrock back." David didn't like the sound of cursed, but another explosion above them left him with no choice. "The escape begins." Royal guards rushed into the chamber. "Your Majesty, enemy ships are landing outside the palace walls." King Orion turned to David and Lyra. Go now. The palace will hold as long as it can. David hesitated. What about you? Shh. The king drew a massive glowing sword from his back, its blade burning blue like fire. I will hold the line. Another explosion shook the floor. Lyra grabbed David's hand. Come on. For the first time, David didn't argue. He ran with her, his chest burning, the mark pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. As they left the hidden chamber, the king's voice echoed behind them. Guardian, protect the heir, or we all fall. The shadow falls. They raced through the palace corridors as alarms blared. Outside the windows, Shadow Faction ships descended like a swarm of black insects, their weapons glowing red. David could see soldiers fighting in the courtyards below, blue and red lights flashing like storms. The mark on his chest glowed brighter, with every step, like it was alive, like it was calling to something. Lyra led him toward a small hangar at the edge of the palace. A sleek royal shuttle waited there, its engines humming as they reached it. A massive explosion ripped through the palace towers behind them. David turned in time to see Shadow Faction soldiers landing on the walls, and at the center of them, tall, armored in black, his eyes burning red, Lord Varric had come himself. The night sky over the palace burned red as Shadow Faction ships circled above like hungry predators. Explosions shook the city. Towers crumbled. Sirens screamed across the capital. Inside the royal hangar, David stood frozen. His chest burned, where the Guardian mark glowed brighter than ever, and then he saw him. Lord Var. The traitor general stood tall on the landing platform, his black armor reflecting the fires around him. His glowing red eyes locked on David like a predator spotting its prey. So, Vark said, his voice deep and cold, the Guardian rises again. A simple human? Pathetic. David swallowed hard. His heart pounded. He had never been in a fight like this. He had never even held a sword before. But the mark on his chest pulsed like a drumbeat, louder and louder. The escape plan. Lyra grabbed David's arm. We have to go. The shuttle will take us to the Forbidden Zone. It's the only safe place left. David's eyes stayed on Varric and him. It's not going to just let us walk away. As if on cue, Varric raised his hand. A dark blade of energy formed in his grip, glowing red like molten metal. He pointed it straight at David. The mark belongs to me. The Empire belongs to me. Hand it over, or die. David took a shaky step back. Yeah, well, I'm kind. I've attached to both. Lyra pushed him toward the shuttle.
Oh, David, please.
We have to leave before, but Varric moved faster than either of them expected. With a blur of motion, he leaped onto the platform, cutting down 2 royal guards in a single swing. David froze. Oh, great. He's like a space ninja. Lyra shoved him again. Get in the ship. The mark awakens Varric. Advance slowly, like a predator enjoying the hunt. The mark chose wrong this time. You're weak, afraid. You'll die just like the last Guardian. David felt anger rising. He didn't even know why. Maybe it was the way Varric said weak. Maybe it was the sight of soldiers falling outside the palace walls, or maybe it was the mark itself. Suddenly it felt alive. Heat surged through David's veins. His chest burned like fire, and then a sword of pure blue energy formed in his hands. Glowing like a star ripped from the sky, David stared at it in shock. Whoa, okay. Did not see that coming. Varric's red eyes narrowed, so the mark awakens. Good. Now I can kill you properly. The duel begins. The two charged at each other, its energy swords clashing with a sound like thunder. Varric's attacks were fast and brutal, every strike shaking David's arms. David barely blocked them, his feet sliding back across the metal floor. Lyra watched from the shuttle ramp, panic in her eyes. David, you can't beat him. Get in the ship. But David couldn't run. Not now. Each swing of Varric's blade came closer, sparks flying as the swords collided. David fought back, awkward at first, then faster, as if the mark itself was guiding his hands. Varric snarled, You're stronger than you look, but still no match for me. He kicked David backward. The human crashed into a crate, gasping for air. The king sacrificed before Varak could finish him. A new voice cut through the chaos. Varak. King Orion appeared at the hangar doors, his own blue sword blazing in his hand. Ah! Behind him, Royal. Soldiers poured in, forming a defensive wall. Varak turned slowly. Ah, the old king himself. King Orion charged forward, his sword swinging in a blur of blue light. This ends tonight, traitor, Varak laughed darkly. Yes, it does. The two clashed in a storm of energy and steel, blue and red light. Flashing across the hangar, David scrambled to his feet, clutching his own sword. He had never seen anyone fight like this. The king moved with the speed of a man half his age. Every strike fueled by fury and duty, but Varak was stronger, faster. The battle raged across the platform until, with a sudden strike, Varak drove his blade deep into the king's side. Father, Lyra screamed. King Orion staggered, his sword dropping with a clang. David froze as the king fell to his knees, blood staining his silver armor. With his last breath, King Orion looked at David. Protect the air, he whispered. Then he collapsed. The turning point, David felt something inside him snap. The mark on his chest blazed brighter than ever, flooding his body with strength, with rage, with power he didn't understand. Varak turned toward him, red eyes glowing. Now it's just you and me, boy. David gripped his sword. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not after what Varak had done. You want the mark? David growled. Come take it. The duel exploded again, faster, fiercer than before. David's strikes grew stronger, his movements sharper, as if the mark itself was fighting through him. Varak roared in anger. Impossible. No human is this strong. David drove him back step by step until, with one final strike, he plunged his blue sword straight through Varak's chest. The traitor general froze, red eyes wide in disbelief. No, this cannot be. His body collapsed in a burst of red light. Varak was gone. The end of the battle outside, the Shadow faction soldiers faltered as their leader fell. Royal forces pushed them back, driving the enemy ships into retreat. Lyra ran to David, tears in her eyes. You did it. You saved us. David looked at the fallen king, his chest heavy. Not all of us. Lyra touched his shoulder gently. He knew the risk. He believed in you. David looked down at the glowing mark on his chest. I didn't even believe in me. But the mark burned softer now, calmer, like it was at peace. The new beginning. Days later, the empire gathered in the capital. A new ruler was crowned Queen Lyra. David stood at her side. The guardian's sword on his back. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel ready. But as the people cheered, as the empire began to rebuild, David knew one thing. The guardian had returned. And if darkness ever rose again, he would be ready.